Hey guys, this is x-tec. Welcome back to my continuing lessons on how to set up Image BBS 3.0. In this lesson we'll continue on where the previous lessons have left off and talk about things like what to do first, and then we'll move on to the configuration editor and cover all the left side functions in the configuration editor, such as the macros editor, the command set, payroll editor, logon editor, login mods, maintenance mods, wall adds, access groups, file lists, function keys, light bar, alarms, and its submenu of light bar definitions, alarms, and netmail alarms. So, with that said, let's get started. So I've already logged on to the BBS in local mode, and I'm sitting at the main prompt. I'm going to go to full screen mode by pressing the F1 key. Bring up the sysapp menu by pressing the sysapp maintenance menu by entering a double question mark. Now notice about 2/3 of the way down the command SF, sysapp file editor. One of the first things you should do when setting up a new system is to create the e.sysapps file. So we're going to use the SF command to create that file. We're going to use option 1 to create the sysapp file. Continue yes. Hit any key. Then we're going to use option 5 to add a sysapp. Since I'm the only user on the board, the ID number is 1. Is image sysapp correct? Yes. First name Mickey. Last name Mouse. And for this demonstration, I'm just going to hit return on all the other items in the record and hit enter to save the file. Okay, now that the e.sysapp file is created, we can quit. It's important to create the e.sysapp file because it's used every time a new user logs onto the board, whether or not he answers the question yes or no to the "Are you an image sysapp?" The next thing we want to create is the user biography file. If you notice in the main menu, at the bottom of the list, there is a UB command, user biographies. This is held in another rel file, and the rel file needs to be created before it's used. So we enter UB, and I created the u.biographies file. I don't need to view any user, I'll just hit return right here. So that's it for first things first. Next, let's go to the IM configuration module, and let's talk about the macros editor. Enter A, and it tells me that the file's not found. So we want to create the macros files. I'm just going to create one macro file. More can be added later. So enter the macro number 1. It tells me 78 characters. This can be anything. These are little sayings that pop up anytime you're near the main prompt. So I'm just going to say welcome to Image 3.0. And hit return a couple of times. Now I can list my macros. It'll ask me which one I want to start at. I'll enter 1. Edit number 1. It says welcome to Image 3.0. Change it. This is where you can edit it. I'm going to say no. So I'm going to quit out of that, and it'll bring me back to the configuration menu. Next, let's look at the command set. These are the ECS commands that are used to do most of the work on the Image 3.0 board. You've got several commands available. You can add ECS commands, delete, edit, load, save, get, put, find, view, and quit. Let's just view a few. Let's start at, since we have 70, let's start at number 65. Now you see it brings up a list of the macros that are defined. Some are go-tos, some are go-subs. Most of the go-subs you'll find in the macros go to a line number. And most of the go-tos go to a file. I'm not going to go into how to create or modify or edit the ECS commands in this lesson. That'll be a lesson for some time in the future. So let's just quit out of there. Next we go to the Payroll Editor. The Payroll Editor means there's a auto maintenance program that you can add to your auto maintenance setup to pay your sysapps or your co-sysapps or your subboard sysapps a quantity of credits, and you can pick what day of the week you want it to run on. So let's see what happens if we add ID number 1 and credits. Let's say I want to give him 100 credits every time, once a week. That's all there is to that. That creates the sysapp pay file. We're going to quit out of there. Save changes, yes. Okay, the next item we're going to look at is the Logon Editor. You see that the Logon Editor goes to a sub-menu that contains login mods, maintenance mods, wall adds, and quick lists. Let's look at the login mods. There are no mods active. We're going to use the help file, and this will explain how to use this utility. It'll allow you to add up to 40 LMP modules to your login options that use the question either yes or no to launch them, or you can set it up to use a graphic menu interface. Most of the commands are self-explanatory, but there's a couple that need explanation. You can read this help file. It should explain pretty much on how to set up the login mods, but notice the note down at the bottom. When configuring your login modules in the graphic menu mode, place all your forced modules at the bottom of the list. They will be run during login prior to the menu appearing. Not placing the forced modules as last in the list may cause some of the wrong programs to be run from the menu selection list. So let's keep that in mind. And we're going to add a login module. It tells me that you can enter the $sign for a directory of the login modules that are available. Let's add the anagram module. And enter description. Access level, we're not going to allow the new users to, the level 0 users to use it, so we're going to call it 1022. And we're going to give the user the option to execute. Add this module, yes. Now let's add another module. Enter the $, and let's call it credit. Let's add the credit pool module. Access 1022. This one we're going to use as a forced module because, yes. Okay, notice because this is a forced module, there's a right greater than sign placed in front of item number 2. Let's add another module. Let's add the news 3 module, or just the news file. Notice there's 3 different versions of the news files, either news, news 2, or news 3. You can play around with these and see which one you prefer, but we're just providing 3 different versions so that you can choose which one is your preference. Now we're going to set that up for access level 1023. Notice if you enter the question mark here, if you don't know which access level to add it to, it'll bring up a group. It'll bring up the access levels group by group, and you can enter yes or no to apply it to that access level. This is going to be a forced module also. Next, we're going to add another one. Let's add the today login module. The today login module is the today in history. Now, in order for the today in history login module to work, you're going to have to associate it with an AutoMaintenance program. We'll talk about that later. Call this the description today in history. Access 1023. And give the user the option to execute. Yes. Okay, now you notice it showed up as item number 4, which is below the forced modules. So what we're going to have to do is move the today in history module to a position that is higher than the forced modules. So let's use the move function. Move which item number 4 to which position number 2, and there you have it. Now that we've set up a few modules to be used in the login sequence, now we need to decide whether to do these as a question yes or no to the user, or to use the graphic menu interface. I want to use the graphic menu interface, and I've got the option of using 1 or 2 columns in the graphic menu. I'm going to use 1. Let's see if there's any more that we want to add. We've already added a view, and let's add the VA dot graph dot 1. Make sure that you use the correct syntax when adding these modules, otherwise they won't be found. This is the board activity. Give the user the option to execute. Add this module, yes. And now we're going to have to move that one to above the forced modules also. So move number 5 to position 3. Now that I've got the login modules configured the way I want to, we're going to quit out of this function and save the changes. Just quit, and it brings us back to the configuration editor. So let's go back and look at the login modules, and just to make sure that they're correct the way we entered them, and they are. So I'm going to quit, and it takes me back to the configuration editor. Next, let's look at the maintenance mods. Right now we don't have any maintenance mods set up, so we need to add a maintenance module. When you do that, it'll bring up a list of available maintenance modules. Right now the list is short because we haven't added any games, or the weed mods. So basically, let's see. First one I want to add is the blocks free. And I want that to run every day of the week, so you can, I'm going to enter, just hit return. I want it to run every month and every date. So you notice the blocks free module will run every day of the week, every month, all dates. Let's add another one. Let's add the AN. The AN maintenance module is the AutoNewUser module. Whenever you have a new user log in, his handle and location he's calling from will go into a temp file, and this maintenance module will write a news file welcoming new users. So we're going to add that. We're going to want to run it every day of the week. Let's add another one. Now, since we added the credit pool module to the login mods, we need to run the CP maint auto maintenance program at midnight. So we'll add that every day of the week. And we also added the today in history to the login modules. And we're going to add the today module to the maintenance modules. We also want that to run every day. Let's see if there's any more. Okay, the sysapp payroll. Now, I only want the sysapp payroll to run on Sundays, one day a week. So I enter 1 there. I want it to run every month, every date. Now you notice it comes up a little differently than the ones that we run every day. And what do we got? Blocks free, AutoNew, credit pool maintenance, today in history, payroll. There's a module called LKBU. If you're running on a Lieutenant Kernel, you might want to run the Lieutenant Kernel backup. But before you run that or add that to your auto maintenance, load that program and read the remarks statements at the bottom of the list, because you're going to have to edit that file before you run it. And the reason I say that is because your files may not be located in the same locations as what's the default settings in the module. So that's all I want to add to my auto maintenance program. So I'm going to quit and save changes. Let's go back and check the maintenance mods and make sure that they're the way that we had them set up. They are, so we quit. Wall adds. Wall adds are advertisements for your BBS or someone else's BBS that you can add, and they'll appear during login in the either the local wall or the network wall if you're networked and carry the network walls. Since right now we don't have the local wall configured for the login modules, we don't need to add that, but if we did, it would ask you for the name of the BBS and it would ask you for the name of the BBS, let's say Commodore Image, and the telnet address. So that's how you create a wall add. They won't do anything unless you're running one of the walls. And last, we'll talk about the quick list. The quick list will identify sysapps or co-sysapps or other users that you want to be able to log in using I at the login prompt. Let's add myself. You notice that since I'm in local mode and I'm the only user, it brings up my handle. And there's a list of flags, so let's identify the flags. These are items that you can configure the instant login person to be able to do. Include him in the feedback list, yes. Include to the e.feedback. I'm going to include myself in the feedback shadow and the remote instant login and the console instant login. And then I'm going to edit the description. Sysapp. Now if you've got multiple sysapps or co-sysapps and you want them to be able to view the comments in the feedback section, then you would add them to this list and edit their flags accordingly. Since I don't have any other users, I'm done with this, so quit and save changes. So that's everything on this submenu. Let's quit. Next we'll talk about the access groups. Notice you've got actually 10 access groups from group 0 to group 9, and each one has a defined set of parameters, or what you may call flags, for what they can do. So first thing I'm going to do is edit the group name for level 9 and call it sysapp. Now notice the flags are set to everything is on. For the sysapp, you want yourself to be able to do everything that's required as far as maintenance when you're using the BBS. When it comes to max idle time, that identifies 9 minutes. On the calls per day listed as 0, that means unlimited. For the time per call being 0, that means that also is unlimited. And the downloads per call times 10 is being 0 means that there's no limit to the number of downloads per call. Let's edit the group 0 and call it unvalidated. Now you see that the unvalidated user can't do much. He's only allowed 1 call per day. His max idle time is 2 minutes. He's only allowed 15 minutes for his first call. And although he's allowed 10 downloads per call, if you look up at the UD access, it says yes. You might want to change that to no. You want him to be able to use email in case he wants to leave you a message, so let's change number 9 to yes. But we only give him 20 lines in the editor. Let's edit group 1 and call it new user. Now a new user, you may want to give him limited access until he learns how to use the BBS. So let's go down the list and see what we want to change. We're going to stick with no for non-weed status, credit ratio 1:1, local maintenance no. We're going to allow him to post and respond in the message boards. We're going to allow him to have UD access. We're going to give him let's say 30 editor lines. Whoops, I messed that up. Go back to new user. For number 6, let's give him 30 editor lines. Unlimited downloads no, remote maintenance no, email yes. So enter number 9. We want him to be able to view the user list no. The board activity register or the log view no. We don't want him to do sub maintenance or file maintenance. We want to allow him to use MCI when he's in the message boards. UD's at prime time no, max idle time 2, calls per day. Let's raise his call per day to 3. And the time per call to 30 minutes. So now you can see that as you get a new user, if he sticks around and becomes a participator on your board, you can define more access groups to allow more functions. Let's say in group 8 you want to reserve that for a sysapp. You want to give that sysapp non-weed status. And you want to give him a credit ratio higher than 1:1, so let's call it 5:1. He doesn't need local maintenance, most likely, well, unless he's going to log in from the local console. So let's change number 3 to local maintenance. He's going to have post and respond. He's going to have UD access, max editor lines. Let's give him 90. Unlimited downloads, yes. Remote maintenance, yes. Email, yes. Number 9. User list, yes. Go to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Max idle time 16. Give him 9 minutes of max idle time. 17. Calls per day. Enter 0 for unlimited. 18. Time per call 0 for unlimited. And 20. Downloads per call 0 unlimited. So you see, the only difference you want to make between a sysapp and a sysapp is maybe the local maintenance, since sysapps are probably going to be calling in from remote. You can leave that checked as no. So that's all I'm going to talk about as far as the access groups. When you're done editing the access groups, you want to save the changes. Okay, now we go to file lists, and notice it says error opening UD file. That's because we haven't defined any UDs yet. Plus, the file lists are an option that's planned for a future update when we add those functions to the GF section. And let's look at the item G, the function keys. What this menu is designed for is to give you a set of alternate function keys to be able to use when you're in image term. There's no need to edit these because we're still waiting on a ML upgrade to the machine language portion of the program in order to be able to use these function keys in the image term. So you can leave this just the way it is. Hopefully, if we ever get an update to the machine language, we'll be able to define those and you'll be able to use those alternate function keys in the image term. So next we'll go to the light bar, and notice it takes us to a submenu, and we've already looked at the light bar definitions, but let's look at them once more and I'll explain a little bit more about it. You notice that certain light bar functions have a dash in the checkmark column. What that means is that you cannot edit these from the light bar editor. And the reason is because these functions are controlled by the program. The program will either put a check mark there or remove a check mark depending on what's happening at the time. But if we go through the list, you've got 4 pages of light bar functions that have been defined, and then let's go back, let's continue to page 8. These are special light bar functions. Once you become really familiar with how ImageBBS runs, you can use these page 8 lightbar functions to enable and trigger certain functions that are available on your BBS. Since we don't have anything like that going on right now, we won't talk about this, and maybe it'll be a lesson in the future. So let's quit out of this. We haven't made any changes, so it doesn't ask us that. B, alarms. Now notice these are also special alarms, and you can, for the first 8, you can set a time, and it uses an if-then statement to determine if that position of the light bar is enabled, then perform the function on the other side of the light bar position. And then on items 9 through 16, you can define those for other functions, and one of the functions that I've defined mine for is when to update the clock. So I'll give a brief explanation of that. For item 9, I'm going to say that every day I want the clock to be updated at a certain time. So and this only works if you're running your image set time from a CMD module. So at 2 a.m. I want to turn on a check mark that'll update the clock, and at 2:01 a.m. I want to disable this function. So at number 3, we're going to enable it, and number 4, it'll ask you which check mark do you want triggered. Now I know that that's check mark number 25. I'll just bring up the split screen momentarily and notice that as we cursor over, that's the left side of ASC is number 16, the right side is 17, then we go 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So you notice that the right side of TRC is 25. So if you remember from lesson 3, if we were at the idle screen and we triggered the right side of TRC, it would update the image time as long as we had the set clock feature set to update the time from an image from a CMD device. Right now we've only got one time update set in this alarm settings. You may want to do that for a few more times throughout the day, and if your image board happens to be at the idle screen when this trigger comes on, it will update the time for you. This is useful when you're running in Vice, especially in Super CPU mode, because sometimes the image system loses time. Let's quit out of this menu. By hitting the return key and go into the netmail alarms. Now notice this board is not networked, at least not yet, but if it were, we would be able to set up 24 times throughout the day to perform network maintenance. If you're in the network and you're linked with another board, you're going to want to set your netmail trigger times for a time other than when your connections are are doing network maintenance, so that you don't end up trying to call each other at exactly the same time. We're done with that, and we're done with the contents of this lesson, so let's just quit out of that. back at the main prompt. So that's it for this lesson. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be making more videos. I think the next one will be how to go into the base editors and set up your message boards and UD section and 6. I hope this lesson was helpful. If you want to see more of my videos, go to YouTube and search for Larry Hedman.